A beautiful landmark here in the heart of Texas is called Enchanted Rock, and it's not too far from Fredericksburg and not too far from what's known as Llano, Texas. Kind of in between in Texas Hill Country in the starting of it, and it has a different look to it than anywhere else. And truly, it looks somewhat prehistoric whenever you're there. It looks somewhat untouched. And the oddity there is that there are these giant pink granite mountains that are here. There are two giant ones, one bigger than the other, and then three smallers, and they're referred to as a family, like a man and his wife, and then their three kids, and the little bitty one over there is called Peanut. And they'll show you in the display they have on the inside how it looked in primordial times, but the tops of this have cracked off many, many times in layers between 1 foot thick and about 12 foot thick, and in layers due to the heating up from the sun and then cooling down at night and heating up during the sun and cooling down at night, and it cracks down deeper in the rocks and does it on a fracture point that's a certain distance from the surface, creating thin sheets that crack off. And indeed, this was used for the Texas Capitol building and many famous buildings and granite works that are around the United States and the world. It's one of the only places that you can find this unique pink granite at. It's quite beautiful to look at, and it's a great place to hike back when you could. It goes up to like 425 foot above the surrounding area, but the surrounding area is raised about 300 foot below the flattened part of the whole area too. So it's up on an area, and then these bubbles are sticking up, and it looks like bald heads sticking up out of the ground. Um, it's called a monodoc, and a monodoc really just means like an anomaly of rock. Whenever you have rock just poking up out of nowhere, a giant piece of granite or a giant this or giant that, it's called a monodoc, and it's the largest one in the United States, and it's part of a historical park system that we have here in Texas, and it was designated a landmark here in 1936. It was rated in 2017 as the best campsite. They have rock festivals there and stuff down in the camping area that they have down below it, in a whole setup area and campsites and things like that. So it's pretty nice. Once it gets way too found out, it's not going to be that nice though, but it's a great place to camp and stuff. And so here is Fredericksburg, and Enchanted Rock is right near it here, and you can tell it's not too far off the Balcones fault line over here, and then Edwards Aquifer and stuff running down into it. So here's the way this kind of look. It's like a dome, and you can see how it's cracked loose in areas. A lot of this they don't want you to walk around on. The other parts of it, it's been taken off of and utilized, and they don't mind it at all. And you can see the striations in this top area that's not real evident in the bottom area. Sure, some of that's lichen and things that are encrusted into it, but there's somewhat of a swirl pattern into this too that's somewhat unique. And the the view on this is really doesn't tell you the truth of it and the reality of it. It seems like you're on the edge of fixing to fall off of a ball, like you've walked into the edge of the earth and about to fall off the side. It doesn't look like what you really are appearing to look at here. It seems like it's easy to climb up. In certain areas, there's no way you could possibly climb it. And if you try to climb down, you'll fall off. There's no grip. You will come off of it. Other areas are more shallow to it. So it's not a perfect ball, but it's a batholith. It's kind of like a magma formation below the earth that formed a little too far below the crust of the earth, and as it erupted up and started to try to form a volcano, instead of penetrating the surface and erupting out and then developing a volcano in its own mountain off of its own spew in one point, this made giant bubbles, kind of like, I don't know, if you blow back into chocolate milk, how it'll leave these bubbles on the surface. Well, it burped up these bubbles, and then they seemed to have cooled. It didn't have its effect to be able to blow up. It wasn't big enough and things, and all it does is create something like this. And there's no more geological activity to this, other than the fact of every once in a while it does crack loose from it due to hot and cold, and you get in the end of summer, whenever it gets real hot here in Texas and get cool nights, and you can even hear it cracking from the distance, and people that are down at the campsite can hear this and it sounds like somebody's up there hitting rocks and stuff on each other and doing things, but it's really just small fractures happening and releasing of small pieces of this. You can see it for miles around, and it's called the basin of the Llano Uplift, which I was telling you about. Like, this whole area is slightly raised up from what it used to be, and it's a ground part of the segmented ridge, the surface expression of a large igneous batholith. So that's what it's telling you. It's not really a volcano, but something different, called the Two Mountain of Granite of Middle Precambrian age. So it's 6 million years ago, and if you've watched my recent video on the Mediterranean, that forms during 6 million years ago. So there's a huge amount of volcanic activity that happens, and it's looked at as being after perhaps a big meteor strike or perhaps the Tiamat strike, something along that line, that had caused all of this resettling, all of this moving, and indeed made Pangea want to spread, and things started happening. It took something big to make that just all of a sudden spread out, and to react different than it had for billions of years before. Anyhow, so the area is full of metamorphic schist, but anyhow, it's called a pack saddle schist. The intrusive granite of the rock mass, what they call Pluton, was exposed by erosion of the surrounding sedimentary rock, primarily Edwards limestone, which is exposed a few miles to the south of Enchanted Rock. So after this eroded away, it left this kind of exposed, and of course it was already cracking and letting loose. And if you were to dig all around it, it would go much further. We're looking at a lot of soil, sand, and dust, and erosion of other effects too. But you can see it's up on a mountain, and so that's, I believe, we're standing on the daddy, looking at the mama, and that's one kid, and Peanuts behind dad there in the small little, burp. But anyhow, archaeology, through their evidence, indicates that human visitation at the rock going back to about 11,000 years at least. According to the book, The Enchanted Rock, published in 1999 by R. Kennedy, a researcher said that these hunter-gatherers had flint-tip spears, fire, and stories. With these resources some 12,000 years ago, the first Texans became the wellsprings of Plains Indian cultures. On the basis of archaeological evidence, human habitation at Enchanted Rock can be traced back at least 10,000 years or 10,000 years BC. Paleo-Indian projectile points, or arrowheads, 11 to 12,000 years, have been found in the area upstream and downstream of the rock. The oldest authenticated projectile point found with the present-day park is a plain viewpoint type, dating back to 10,000 years. So, of course, you could probably find some more than that, and somebody would have dropped one off the edge and it would have fallen, slidden off. But of course, it's under lots of sediment that's at the edges of these rocks. No one's digging around them trying to see what's exactly been there. But indeed, by looking at the structure and having been on it myself before, you could find areas people could have fallen off, and then if you dug there, you might even find bodies, other information. But it's had a lot of work done on it. There was vandalism at one time and stuff on there, but folklore of local Tanaka or Tonkawa, Apache, and Comanche tribes ascribes magical and spiritual powers to the rock, hence the name Enchanted Rocks. While attempting to hide from Anglo settlers in the area, the natives would hide on top of the two tiers of the rock, where they were invisible from the ground below, but could see what was going on. The first European to visit the area was probably Alvar Nunez Cabeza de Vaca in 1536. The Tonkawa, who inhabited the area in the 16th century, believed that ghost fires flickered at the top of the dome, and particularly they had heard unexplained creaking and groaning, which geologists attribute to the rock's nighttime contraction after being heated by the sun, the cracking I was telling you about. So whenever they would hear that at night, they would say there was ghosts up there. The name Enchanted Rock derives from Spanish and Anglo-Texan interpretations of such legends and related folklore. The name Crying Rock has also been given to the formation due to a few other folklore stories of it. A plaque formerly embedded in Enchanted Rock near the top, but now removed at the kiosk below, reads, "From its summit in 1841, Captain John C. Hayes, while surrounded by Comanche Indians, who cut him off from his ranging company, repulsed the whole band and inflicted upon them such heavy losses that they fled, marked by the state of Texas in 1936. So, other legends and folklore that are associated with Enchanted Rock are that it was named Spirit Song Rock for native legends that they had, and the sounds you hear at nighttime and the whistling of the winds. It's revered by native tribes as a holy portal to other worlds and a shamanistic type of area for certain cultures. Anyone spending the night at the Enchanted Rock becomes invisible. And of course, this probably comes from other stories like this one, where Spanish priests fled to the rock pursued by native tribes, disappeared, and returned to tell a mystic tale of falling into a cavern or a cave and swallowed by the rock, encountering many spirits in the tunnels, eventually to be spit out 2 days later. Now, there's a whole story behind that. I could probably make a video on it, but needless to say that they'd gone down into a cave and weren't found by the Indians, and they went down through and out 2 days later. Later got taken into some type of folklore, and they disappeared. So haunted spirits of warriors, now a non-extinct Native American tribe who were slaughtered at Enchanted Rock by a rival tribe. So this happened back in antiquity, perhaps the people the stone points we're talking about. Haunted by spirits of warriors of a now extinct Native American tribe were slaughtered by that rival tribe, and American princess, a Native American princess, who threw herself on the rock after witnessing the slaughter of her people. Now, there's also alleged stories of sacrifices, and of course there is all the way through South America and up into a lot of the Indian folklore, both by the Comanche and the Tonkawa tribes, which are no longer existent, but there is a tribe here near us, a little northeast of this area, known as the Tawakoni. And and it's believed that they are somewhat kin to them, and they go through up and into Oklahoma also. Anyhow, so it's also believed to be a lost silver mine, or perhaps the lost El Dorado mine, gold mine, but whenever you go down through the cracks, you can tell it's just fractures and fissures, and it really wasn't been a mine, and they haven't found a lot of gold in this area or anything, or silver, to substantiate any of that. They say bad fortune and death will befall anyone who climbs the rock with bad intentions, and of course that's the bad spirits, or the spirits coming against you. Footprint indentations on the rock that walk up the rock of Native American chief who sacrificed his daughter, condemned to walk Enchanted Rock forever. Now, they tell you this story when you see these footprints that people have carved out, and it walks in a few places, and they say that that was his footprints and stuff, and that you have to walk in the path of the chiefs. I believe that there was probably an ancient ceremony where you did something along that line too, perhaps even took off your sandals, you were on hollowed ground, you walked around in the things and did certain ceremonies, because it seemed to be around the edges of it, to where you were calling to the winds and calling to the 4 points. But anyhow, they have women screams at night, and they're supposed to have a white woman who took refuge on Enchanted Rock after escaping a kidnapping locally by Native American Indians, so apparently she didn't escape. And then Spanish soldier Don Jesus Navarro Enchanted Rock to rescue of native maiden Rosa, daughter of Chief Tehuan, after her kidnapped by Comanches intent on sacrificing her upon the rock, which might actually tell you why the one before that was ever talked about. Anyhow, there's lots of flora and fauna there, and it looks fantastic. I want to show you a little video of it here. But you can even see the entrances, like caves that they have there. Pardon me. They have an annual race that they run up the thing. They have Friends of Enchanted Rock that go with it. There's picnicking, summit trails. There's a rock festival like I told you about and stuff. It's a famous bird watching site and area, and just the look of it is just fantastic. Let's take a little look at this. And this is flying over one into the other, and you can see each one of the balls, but you see those rocks that are all on there, and then they're flat topped. Those are one of those peeling off layers like the ones you see in the far left over there. This kind of shows you the angle that you'd have to walk on whenever you walk up and down these things. This is going straight up it. How did that rock stay up there? Looks like it just slid right off. But indeed, this whole area looks primitive, if you will. It looks untouched. It looks odd. It sticks out. Because of its volcanic effect, and you're being able to realize that it actually looks very much, primordial, and it's a place set apart. In fact, they say it there. Here's some walking trails where you can see this. No, she's not my wife. She's just in the video. But there's streams that run off of there down through there. Here's a little speed run going up the top. Well, not up the top, up 1/5 of it. This is more regular speed. And the whole way you're going uphill. You can see the angle you're coming up at, but then it gets worse than that, or more than that. You might want to stop and get a drink of water every once in a while. Take a little break. There are places you can sit around on to do so, and you can start to see the view that one gets and the angle and how hard it is to just get going up this thing. It's quite a hike. There's the area down there. It can wear you out. There's primordial ponds that are out here, as you can see, and it just looks extremely primitive, somewhat untouched. And a beautiful place. Something that can take you back to roots. There you can see the crackling of that thin pieces, and how walking down is going to be real sharp. And this area you can walk down in, most you cannot walk down in. Valley areas here, and it'll lead down to water and things. You can see the bubble coming down off there. And this is one of the smaller ones. This is one of the two kids and the mom, I think. And climbing back up the other mom is quite a trick. There you are looking back. Yeah, you can bring your dogs here, but just be real careful where you let them go, and it might be rough on their feet. As it is going to be rough on your feet too a little bit. You can see that chipped off piece too, and just look at the view that's here. And if you saw some cavemen running around, it would be nothing. If you saw dinosaurs walking in the distance, it wouldn't be anything for you to see. Well, it would be amazing, of course, but if you wanted to make a Jurassic Park, you should probably fence in this place around here at Enchanted Rock, down in the center of Texas.